3 days after I triggered the withdrawal that cost Kevin Marshall his job, I was sitting in a coffee shop near the office when my phone buzzed with a news alert. Apex Financial CEO resigns, amid capital crisis, stock down 23%. I took a sip of my coffee and deleted the notification. The hard part was already over. Let me back up and tell you how we got there. Kevin Marshall walked past me like I was a piece of furniture that someone forgot to move out of the way. He shook hands down the line, firm grips, quick smiles, making small talk with each person at the conference table. When he got to me, I still had my hand out. He looked at it, then at me, and kept walking. He didn't even slow down when he said it. We don't shake hands with legacy dead weight. The room went quiet for about 2 seconds. Then a couple people laughed, nervous but eager to please the new boss. Someone else suddenly found their notes very interesting. No one looked at me. I'm Jason Morrison, 48 years old. And for the past 19 years, I've been the guy who made sure Apex Financial didn't collapse under bad decisions. I wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but I was the one who kept us out of trouble when everyone else wanted to chase the next big deal. Kevin Marshall was loud enough for all of us. He took his spot at the head of the conference table, still standing like he was about to deliver a keynote speech. "Let's cut to the chase," he said. "We're implementing a new efficiency model. That means eliminating legacy roles that don't align with our growth trajectory." His eyes flicked toward me. Cold as winter. Jason Morrison. Effective immediately. Just like that. No explanation, no discussion, just done. A couple people actually applauded. The rest sat there in uncomfortable silence. Kevin went on about agility and decisiveness and moving forward without being held back by yesterday's thinking. He made cruelty sound like business strategy and expected everyone to be grateful for his honesty. Amanda Rodriguez from HR sat next to him, nodding at all the right moments, already reaching for the paperwork she had ready. I kept my face neutral, didn't interrupt, didn't defend myself. I learned a long time ago that when guys like Kevin are putting on a show, fighting back just gives them what they want. He wanted a reaction. He wanted the room to see him dominate. Instead, I waited until he finished his little performance and turned to Amanda, not to him, to her. "Can you clarify something for the record?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "When does the termination become legally effective?" The room went dead quiet. Pen stopped moving. Kevin smiled, thin and impatient. "Now," he said. "I'll need the exact language," I replied, still calm. "And the timestamp." That was the first crack in his confidence. Barely noticeable to anyone else, but I saw it. The slight hesitation. The quick glance at Amanda like he was wondering if there was something he should know. What stayed with me after that meeting wasn't Kevin's voice or his smug expression. It was all the years he'd just erased with a sentence. I sat in my car in the parking garage afterward, not ready to drive home yet, while the memories came back. Late nights fixing presentations that would have blown up deals by morning. Weekends spent rewriting risk assessments because someone wanted to move fast instead of smart. All those times I caught problems before they became front-page disasters. There was the time in 2018 when I stopped a $45 million acquisition because their compliance documentation was fabricated. The executives were furious about the delay until the target company got raided by federal regulators 3 weeks later. Or the derivatives exposure I flagged in early 2020 that would have cost us $60 million when the market crashed. Management called me overly cautious right up until they didn't. Those moments never came with praise, they came with silence, which I was fine with because the work mattered more than the credit. Kevin Marshall showed up after most of that foundation was already built. He inherited a stable company and called it his vision. He walked into rooms where the hard decisions had already been made and talked like he'd created the clarity himself. His resume was perfect on paper, top-tier MBA, consulting background at McKinsey, all the right buzzwords. He spoke in complete sentences that sounded impressive but said nothing risky. To him, contracts were just paperwork that other people handled. Risk management was something that slowed down real business. He believed authority flowed down from the title on your business card and the confidence in your voice. Sitting there in the parking garage replaying his dismissal, I realized something that should have worried me more than it did. Kevin didn't actually know what I did. Not really. He didn't know what systems I controlled, what approvals went through my desk, or what required my signature, before it became real. He saw a cost center labeled risk management, not a control point that touched every major transaction the company made. That wasn't just arrogance. That was dangerous ignorance dressed up as decisive leadership. I drove home to my apartment, poured myself a drink, and opened my laptop. Not out of panic, but out of habit. When you've spent 2 decades building safeguards, you tend to remember where you put them. My laptop hummed to life while I sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where I'd worked through countless weekend crises over the years. My inbox was mostly quiet, except for one old email thread that had surfaced in a search, dated from way back before Kevin's arrival. The subject line was boring as hell: Capital Release Authority, final documentation. I clicked it open. Inside was confirmation of delegated authority for major capital release approvals. Clean language, properly signed off by the board, never rescinded. The document was from 2019, during our big refinancing push when everyone was scrambling to streamline decision-making processes. Legal had insisted on a single authorization point for speed and clarity. Kevin's name wasn't anywhere on it. Mine was. I sat back in my chair feeling something click into place. Not anger anymore, but something sharper. Focus. The clause was buried in Section 12, subsection C. Capital may be withdrawn or redirected immediately if documented executive conduct materially undermines stakeholder confidence or violates fiduciary standards. No committee vote required, no appeal process. Just one signature from the designated risk authority. That was me. I'd argued for that language myself back in 2019, though I'd honestly forgotten about it until now. During the refinancing, there had been concerns about rogue executives making promises they couldn't keep, or worse, lying to investors. Legal wanted a nuclear option, something that could stop money midstream if leadership went off. The rails. The authority covered $380 million in discretionary capital allocation, money that was supposed to fund Kevin's big transformation initiative over the next 18 months. Without it, his entire strategy would collapse like a house of cards. I read through the documentation again, slowly and carefully. The requirements were specific but not complicated. Documented conduct that violated fiduciary duty. Check. Kevin had fired me for no cause other than his ego, potentially exposing the company to wrongful termination liability. Material harm to stakeholder confidence. Check. The meeting had been recorded, and his legacy deadweight comment was about as unprofessional as it gets. Kevin Marshall had never bothered to understand this system. He treated legal appendices like background noise, trusting executive summaries and delegating the details to people he considered beneath his attention. To him, procedures existed to support power, not constrain it. That belief had made him comfortable. It was about to make him unemployed. But first, I needed to be absolutely certain about the chain of custody. I pulled up the company's recording policy and cross-referenced it with the meeting attendance list. Every executive session was automatically archived for governance compliance. Kevin knew that policy, he just didn't respect what it meant. I found the recording file in the system and downloaded a copy. There it was, crystal clear. Kevin's dismissive tone, the refused handshake, the public humiliation. Even better, you could see Michael Anderson, our board chair, grimacing when Kevin said, "Legacy dead weight." Michael had 30 years of experience in corporate governance. He knew a liability when he heard one. Next, I documented everything methodically. Timestamps, exact language, witnesses present, potential legal exposure. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about risk management. Kevin had created a material threat to company stability through reckless leadership behavior. My job, the job he'd just fired me from, was to mitigate exactly these kinds of threats. The irony wasn't lost on me. I saved everything in a folder labeled Risk Assessment, Executive Conduct, and closed my laptop. Nothing impulsive had happened. Nothing emotional was required. This was just due diligence, the same kind I'd been doing for 19 years. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I slept in. No alarm, no urgent emails, no crisis calls. Around 9 a.m., I made coffee and checked the news. Apex Financial stock was up 2% on speculation about Kevin's bold new direction. The market loved his aggressive timeline and promises of quick returns. They had no idea how fragile those promises really were. I spent the day researching precedents, other cases where senior executives had been removed for conduct violations, the legal frameworks that protected companies from leadership that posed reputational risks. The more I dug, the clearer it became that Kevin had handed me everything I needed on a silver platter. Around 5 p.m., my phone started buzzing. Text messages from former colleagues who'd heard about my departure. Most were supportive but cautious. They still had to work there. A few were more direct. Heard what happened in the meeting. That was bullshit, man. Kevin's making enemies fast. Board's not happy. You okay? Let me know if you need anything. I appreciated the support, but this wasn't about needing help. This was about accountability. That evening, I drove over to my ex-wife's house to have dinner with my kids. Sarah, my 18-year-old, was home from her first semester at college. Jake, 16, was dealing with typical teenage stuff. I didn't tell them what had happened at work. They had enough to worry about. "How's the new boss working out?" Sarah asked over pizza. "Still figuring that out," I said. After dinner, Jake showed me a school project about corporate ethics. He'd chosen Enron as his case study, focusing on how internal controls failed to prevent executive misconduct. As he explained the timeline of events, I realized something important. Systems don't protect themselves. They require people willing to use them. I drove home that night with absolute clarity about what came next. Kevin thought authority was something you declared with confidence and backed up with charisma. He'd never understood that real authority was built into processes, signed into contracts, and activated by people who knew how to read the fine print. Tomorrow, I would show him the difference. But first, I had one phone call to make. I waited until Thursday evening to make the call. Not for drama, just for timing. Kevin would have spent 2 full days basking in his victory, probably already making plans for how to spend that $380 million. The money was scheduled to transfer Friday morning to fund his transformation initiative. New hires, office renovations, expensive consultants who would tell him what he wanted to hear. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, laptop open, all the documentation spread out in front of me. The recording file was queued up, the authorization papers were printed, and my phone was turned over so I could see the screen clearly. At 7:30 p.m., I dialed the number for Capital Operations. "This is Morrison. I need to execute an immediate capital withdrawal under Section 12C authority." There was a pause. Professional, brief. "Can you provide the authorization code?" I read off the 12-digit sequence from my documentation. Authorization, Alpha 77 Charlie 9 Delta. Confirmed. Amount and reason code, full discretionary allocation, $380 million. Reason code, documented executive conduct violation with material reputational risk. Another pause, slightly longer. I'll need to verify the documentation in the system. It's already uploaded under reference number SC20241847. Executive session recording from Tuesday, November 14th, 10 a.m. Could hear typing in the background. Then, confirmed, I have the documentation. Processing withdrawal now. This will take 48 to 72 hours to complete due to the amount involved. Understood. Mr. Morrison, just to confirm, this will freeze all related expenditures immediately, effective now. The target accounts will show 0 available balance within the hour. That's correct. Processing complete. You should have confirmation within 30 minutes. I hung up and closed my laptop. The system didn't need supervision now. It just needed time to work. 26 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a confirmation email. Capital withdrawal executed. Reference SC20241847. I deleted it and went to bed. Friday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls. The first one was from Amanda Rodriguez in HR, probably wondering why I hadn't returned my badge yet. The next 3 were from Michael Anderson, the board chair, then Kevin himself, twice, then more calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of something. I made coffee and checked the news first. Nothing yet, but that would change soon. Major capital movements at publicly traded companies don't stay secret for long. My phone rang again. Michael Anderson. "Jason," he said when I answered, "we need to talk. Can you come in this morning? I don't work there anymore, remember? There's been a situation. Kevin's looking for you. The board is asking questions. I think you know why." I did know why. By now, Kevin would have discovered that his entire strategic budget had vanished overnight. His carefully planned initiatives were dead in the water. His credibility was about to follow. "I'm available at 11 a.m., I said. "Conference room B. I'll see you then." The drive to the office felt strange. 2 days ago, I'd been escorted out. Now I was walking back in as if nothing had happened. The security guard nodded at me. He'd worked there for 8 years, had seen plenty of executive drama come and go. I took the elevator to the executive floor. Conference room B was at the end of the hall, glass walls on 3 sides. As I approached, I could see Michael Anderson already inside with 2 other board members I recognized, Patricia Walsh from the Audit Committee and Robert Hughes from Risk Oversight. Michael stood up when I entered. "Jason, thank you for coming. Happy to help." Patricia Walsh got straight to the point. "Did you execute a capital withdrawal yesterday evening?" "I did." "Under what authority?" I placed a printed copy of the authorization documents on the table. Section 12C of the Capital Management Framework, ratified by the Board in March 2019. Executive Conduct Clause. Robert Hughes picked up the papers and skimmed through them. "I remember this. We put it in after the Brennan Industries incident." "That's right," I said. "Insurance policy against rogue leadership." "And you believe Kevin Marshall's conduct triggered this clause?" Michael asked. "I believe the evidence speaks for itself." Patricia pulled out her tablet. "We've reviewed the recording from Tuesday's meeting. Kevin's comments were inappropriate. But $380 million, Jason, that's not a slap on the wrist. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be a circuit breaker." The room went quiet for a moment. These were serious people who understood serious consequences. "Where's Kevin now?" I asked. "Emergency session with legal," Michael said, "trying to figure out if the withdrawal can be reversed." "Can it?" "You tell me. You wrote the clause." I had written it, working with the legal team during those late nights in 2019. We'd made it ironclad on purpose. The framework is clear. Once triggered, the decision stands pending full board review. That review can take up to 90 days. Robert Hughes looked up from the paperwork. "Kevin doesn't have 90 days. His entire strategy depends on that capital. Without it, he's just another consultant with an MBA and no way to deliver on his promises." Patricia Walsh leaned back in her chair. "The market's going to notice. A $380 million budget disappearing doesn't happen quietly." She was right. By lunch, the financial press would be asking questions. By market close, analysts would be downgrading the stock. By Monday, Kevin Marshall would be answering to investors who didn't care about his feelings or his ego. "There's something else," Michael said quietly. "We've had 3 senior managers submit formal complaints about Kevin's leadership style since Tuesday. The HR department is getting nervous about a hostile work environment situation. That was news to me, but not surprising. Kevin had probably spent the last 2 days making more enemies, throwing his weight around without understanding the delicate relationships that actually kept the company running." "What's the board planning to do?" I asked. "That depends," Patricia said. "Are you willing to participate in the review process? We'll need your testimony about the events that led to this action." "Of course." Michael Anderson stood up. "Then we'll convene an emergency board session for Monday morning. Full review of Kevin's conduct and the circumstances of your termination." As I walked back to my car, I could see Kevin through the glass walls of the legal department conference room. He was gesturing animated, talking fast, probably trying to convince someone that this was all a misunderstanding. His jacket was off, his tie was loose, and his confidence was nowhere to be seen. I didn't feel vindicated yet. That would come later, when the process ran its course and justice worked the way it was supposed to. But I felt something else, something quieter and more lasting. I felt like the system was finally working the way I'd designed it. Monday morning arrived with headlines I'd been expecting. Apex financial faces, capital crisis as CEO strategy stalls. The Wall Street Journal had gotten wind of the story over the weekend, though they didn't have all the details yet. The stock opened down 8%. I got to the office at 9:30 for the 10 a.m. board meeting. Same building, same elevator, but everything felt different now. I wasn't the guy getting fired anymore. I was the guy holding the cards. Michael Anderson met me in the lobby. "Ready for this?" "Been ready since Tuesday." The boardroom was fuller than usual. All 7 board members were present, plus legal counsel Lisa Williams and a stenographer for the official record. Kevin was already there, sitting at the far end of the table with his own lawyer. He looked like he hadn't slept much over the weekend. Patricia Walsh called the meeting to order. "We're here to review the events of November 14th and the subsequent capital action taken by Jason Morrison. Kevin, you'll have a chance to present your side first." Kevin stood up, straightened his tie, and launched into what sounded like a prepared speech. He talked about disruptive transformation and necessary personnel changes and unfortunate miscommunication. He called my withdrawal of the $380 million an emotional overreaction and suggested it could be reversed through mutual understanding. He was still performing, still trying to control the narrative, but his audience wasn't buying it anymore. When he finished, Patricia turned to me. "Jason, please walk us through your actions and reasoning. I didn't stand up, didn't need to. Kevin Marshall fired me on November 14th without cause in front of the entire leadership team, using language that created potential liability for the company. The session was recorded per company policy. Under Section 12C of the Capital Management Framework, this constituted grounds for immediate protective action, and the $380 million withdrawal was the minimum necessary to prevent further reputational damage and protect shareholder interests." Robert Hughes spoke up. "Kevin, did you review the Capital Management Framework before taking your position?" "My team briefed me on the key points," Kevin said. "Your team," Patricia repeated. "Did that include Jason Morrison?" Kevin's pause was telling. "I was focused on forward-looking strategy, not legacy procedures." Lisa Williams, our legal counsel, opened a folder. "Since Tuesday, we've received formal complaints from 3 senior managers about hostile work environment issues. Additionally, the wrongful termination exposure from Mr. Morrison's dismissal could exceed $2 million in legal costs alone." Michael Anderson looked directly at Kevin. "In your previous positions, how did you handle personnel changes of this magnitude?" "I believe in decisive leadership. That's not what I asked." The room went quiet. Kevin realized he was losing them, if he hadn't lost them already. He tried a different approach. "Look, Jason's a capable guy, but the company needs to move in a new direction. Sometimes that requires difficult decisions." "Like refusing to shake his hand?" Patricia asked. "Like calling him legacy deadweight in front of his colleagues?" "That was perhaps poorly phrased. It was documented conduct that triggered a $380 million capital freeze," Robert Hughes said. "There's nothing perhaps about it." Michael Anderson leaned forward. "Kevin, what's your plan to restore investor confidence and recover the strategic budget?" For the first time since I'd known him, Kevin Marshall didn't have a ready answer. He looked at his lawyer, who shrugged. He looked around the room but found no allies. "I believe we can work through this together," he said finally. "I don't think we can," Patricia Walsh said quietly. "This board has lost confidence in your judgment and leadership style. They didn't take a vote right then. They didn't need to. Kevin was done, and everyone in the room knew it. The only question was whether he'd resign or make them fire him." His lawyer whispered something in his ear. Kevin nodded, stood up, and said, "I'll submit my resignation effective immediately." He walked out without shaking anyone's hand. The irony wasn't lost on me. After Kevin left, the conversation turned to practical matters. Interim leadership, communication strategy, damage control. They asked if I'd be willing to return as chief risk officer while they conducted a proper CEO search. "Under what terms?" I asked. "Full reinstatement, back pay for the time you were out, and direct board reporting relationship for risk matters." I considered it. The money was good, the vindication was complete, and I could help steady the ship while they found new leadership. But something held me back. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I think my work here is done." Michael Anderson looked surprised. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. The system worked the way it was supposed to. That's enough for me." 2 weeks later, I started a consulting practice focused on corporate governance and risk management. Word travels fast in the financial world, and by Christmas, I had 3 clients who wanted to make sure they had proper safeguards against executive overreach. "Kevin Marshall?" Last I heard, he'd taken a position with a startup in Austin. Smaller company, smaller stage, smaller chance of doing systemic damage. I wished him well, honestly. Some people learn from their mistakes. I kept the newspaper clipping from that Monday. Apex Financial Board removes CEO after leadership crisis. Not because I was proud of bringing him down, but because I was proud that the system I'd helped build had worked when it mattered. The handshake Kevin refused on that Tuesday morning never really bothered me. Handshakes are just gestures. What matters is the structure underneath. The contracts, the frameworks, the safeguards that protect people from leaders who mistake authority for wisdom. 6 months later, Apex hired a new CEO who spent her first week learning everyone's name and understanding how the company actually worked. She asked me to review their risk management protocols as an outside consultant. Professional, respectful, effective. That's the real lesson here. Authority isn't something you take or demand. It's something you earn through competence, protect through preparation, and exercise through systems that outlast any individual personality. When those systems work properly, justice doesn't need to be dramatic. It just needs to be thorough. Real power isn't about demanding respect from your subordinates. It's about building systems so solid that even your enemies have to follow the rules you wrote. The loudest voice in the room is usually compensating for something, while the quiet guy who actually reads the contracts is the one who decides how the story ends.